Greetings, everyone.
Hey, Doctor.
All right, welcome to the IU South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center. My job today is really just to welcome you. So I want to welcome you. Let me do ask, because we like to just kind of get a sense. How many? Is anyone here for the first time? Oh, one. Well, welcome, double welcome to you.
During the last year on that gentleman.
So, just to quickly, we like to, this is really a space, and this is really appropriate for this kind of conversation. I mean, this was a space that began its life in 1922 as the Indianapolis Public Natatorium. I looked up natatorium, but I didn't know what the hell that meant when I first encountered it. But it's a fancy name for indoor swimming pool. And there's some folks here who actually swam here when it was a functioning swimming pool. But in 1922, when it was first constructed as the first municipal public pool in the city of South Bend, it fully excluded African Americans for the first 14 years and then segregated them for the next 14 years. So for almost 30 years, public space here in the city was not fully welcoming to the public, was only welcoming to a portion of the public. And it was through the work, the agitation, the organizing, and the activism of primarily the African American community, but other activists as well, who pushed to open us and make it live up to the creed that it had been built for, and to actually expand that notion of who belongs to the public. It sat as an abandoned building for 30 years before it was reconverted. It now functions as not just a symbol of the history of the civil rights struggle here in South Bend, but as a space where we confront contemporary issues and we look to the future to kind of continue to make the world that we want our children to inherit. And so part of the conversation that we're going to have today is about how do we keep our public schools public. So I'm going to turn this over to Laurie, who will introduce our guest. And welcome. Sit back, and then at the end we'll have an opportunity for a Q&A for you to be able to ask questions and be engaged with it as well. So I look forward to that.
Thank you, Darryl.
Turn it over to Laurie McGowan.
I'm going to stand just to project a little better. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, but most of you probably don't know me. My name is Laurie McGowan, and I am just a member of the NAACP Education Committee. So I was introduced to Dr. Cosby several years ago by a mutual friend and a fellow public education activist. She was invaluable in helping me get a webinar organized for a broad audience. What I found most remarkable was her openness and willingness to connect me to others in her network who could be helpful in getting the work done. She's a genuine and kind person. She is collegial, and she is committed to truth and integrity in all things. Dr. Gayle Cosby knows the Indianapolis Public Schools in and out. She attended IPS from kindergarten through high school, attending several schools including Broad Ripple and Arsenal Technical High School. She started her career as a teacher in IPS elementary schools and served as an IPS board member from 2012 to 2016. Having attended, taught in, and served on the board of Indianapolis Public Schools, she utilized her depth and breadth of experience in and knowledge of the public school system to then study urban education studies at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. She successfully defended her dissertation, bought out but not sold out, a critical autoethnography of a public school board member in the neoliberal turn, and earned her PhD in 2022. She previously earned an MA in teaching at Marian University in 2009. Dr. Cosby has 3 children. She trained new teachers as assistant professor of education at Ivy Tech Community College, and is now assistant professor of special education at Indiana University, Indianapolis. She was recently elected as commissioner of IPS Board District 2. So her unique experience in IPS is a harbinger of things to come in South Bend. Let's hear her story, review the NAACP Charter School moratorium with Oletha Jones, and then we'll talk about how we can best fight for the survival of our public schools. Thank you.
Lori, thank you for that introduction. It's a weird feeling to have someone read off a list of accomplishments and you're like, well, I'm just here to meet people and come alongside you and figure this out, with you organically. And so I appreciate the listing of the accolades. It's kind of overwhelming, but hey, I'm very happy to be here. I'm super excited. I've looked forward to this for a while. We had to find a good date to come, one where there wasn't a Notre Dame game going on, because I was like, I am not dealing with all that traffic. I am just not going to do it. So this turned out to be the good weekend. I had high hopes of leaving here and going to the lake, and of course today it's going to be like 62 degrees or something, so that's not going to happen either, but I am going to venture over to campus and check that out a little bit today and make the best of my time here. And thank you all for welcoming me into your community. So I'm here to tell a story that I've been experiencing for about the last 10 to 15 years in Indianapolis. I hope you don't mind me sitting. Okay. Thank you. I need to see the slides too, even though I made them myself up. I promise. For a reference point, keep myself on track mainly, and y'all can help me too. Keep me on time, because that'll be a struggle for me. So let's see. Here we go. So things we're going to talk about. Indianapolis lens here. As Lori said, I am born and raised there. I'm a product of Indianapolis Public Schools. Haven't really left the east side. Actually, I left the east side for about 2 years and stayed there. Moved right on back. So the neighborhood I grew up in is the neighborhood I reside in now, so I have a very hyper-local focus. I want to share that with you. We'll zoom out a little bit from Indianapolis and talk about some of the things that are happening in the bigger scheme of things at the state level, in the legislature, things of that nature. We will highlight some of the grassroots things that we did in Indianapolis during the legislative session and where I think things might be headed. We'll talk about that because it's coming your way, and that's why I'm here to kind of sound the warning bells for you. And then we're going to take some time at the end. We mentioned there will be opportunity for Q&A, but I also really deeply insist that there's also an opportunity for some networking, okay? Some collaborative efforts, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm trying to do. That's how the work gets started, and that's how we make connections so that we can move forward together stronger. So that's how we'll end, okay, with just some time to meet, greet, and chat, all right? So, Lori already told you a lot about me. I'll tell you a little bit more. As I mentioned, I'm from Indianapolis. I'm a near East Sider. I graduated from Tech High School. I started at Broad Ripple. I had a baby at 15. I was a freshman at Broad Ripple High School. And at Broad Ripple, I don't know, have y'all been to Broad Ripple? It's fun. It's fun, okay? It's a lot of fun. And there's almost too much to do out there. And so I kind of fell into that as a 9th grader and ended up pregnant and truant most of the time. I rode in the back of a cop car exactly once, and that was when the IMPD took me back to Broad Ripple High School to meet the dean. I had been skipping school for a very long time. All of that resulted in me switching over to tech, where I locked it in. I got surrounded by young ladies who were in a similar situation as me, either pregnant or newly parenting, and that helped me to refocus. So graduated from tech a little early, as a matter of fact, and continued on my career, educational career. I always loved school. It was an escape for me from a lot that I had going on in my life, but thankfully, you know, having my daughter at such a young age helped me to refocus and recommit myself to my love of learning. This is my second time elected to the IPS school board. I did serve a term previously from 2012 to 2016. I will center those two experiences. 2012 to 2016 was really at the inception of the privatization movement, so a lot of this is grounded in those very early efforts that we saw unfold around 2011, 2012, and then we'll bring it current, and I'll tell you what's going on nowadays too. I just started my second term in January of this year, just in time for this wild and crazy ride, which was this past legislative session. Yeah, and Lori mentioned I am currently, as of like 2 weeks ago or something, an assistant professor at IU Indianapolis, having departed from Ivy Tech just a couple months ago. All right, so I told you I started this in 2011, 2012. I was elected back then with a lot of money behind me, and what I have up here is proof. I try to give you, I brought my receipts, okay? I'm gonna show you what I mean. This is from my first, this is my first campaign finance report, and you'll see a pretty big number up here, $78,000, okay? In 2010, the election cycle right before mine, people were getting elected with like $500, maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000. $5,000 was a big money school board campaign prior to 2012, okay? What happened in 2012? We got some special interest groups that came to town in Indianapolis, namely the Mind Trust, the Mind Trust is kind of like the puppeteer, if you will. They had been around a little while, and were kind of putting the chess pieces in place, so to speak. And so prior to this 2012 election cycle, the Mind Trust had brought Stand for Children to the city of Indianapolis. Have you all heard of Stand for Children? Nobody? Okay. Stand for Children is a national group that has roots in Portland, Oregon, I believe, that is focused on helping families, parents to advocate for their children. And they do that. In Indianapolis, they do come out to school board meetings. They were out in the legislative session advocating, but they are very pro-charter. In Indianapolis, they are a pro-charter organization. And so in 2012, they supported my campaign. I didn't know what I didn't know when I ran the first time, just to be real frank with you. And so I took the money, I took the support. At the time, let's see, I had a toddler, I had like an 18-month-old at home, and then decided, oh, I'll just run for school board, you know, it's no thing. Stand for Children came along, and they were like, oh, we'll give you a campaign manager. I said, oh, that sounds good. You know, anyone who's had a toddler in the house knows what I mean when I center that experience for you. So, campaign manager, which took a load off of me as a new mom, but also, you know, I lost some autonomy in that, okay? So when I say that I got a campaign manager, what I mean is that I got somebody to kind of step in and start making decisions. I had gotten out super early in this race because the person that I thought would be my opponent had been on the school board for 34 years. And was a giant in the community, well respected. But I just wanted there to be some fresh blood, some new ideas on the board. I had experience as a teacher, as a parent, as a graduate that I wanted to bring. So when Stand for Children took over my campaign, I did kind of lose that organic, everything that I had built my own little website. I was ordering all the things myself, and that was lost. Additionally, you see $78,000 up here, but Stand for Children has a PAC, okay, Political Action Committee, and in that PAC they spend a lot of money that does not touch these reports for the candidates. I remember in my first campaign, folks coming up to me in the community, they'd be like, I'm gonna vote for you, just don't send me another piece of mail. I don't want another mailer from you. Stand for Children had sent out 11 mailers on my behalf. Now, in a school board race, that is insane. It's insane. And those did not go through my finance reporting. Those were PAC mailers. One came from the Chamber of Commerce. So when I tell you that in 2012, it exploded onto the scene. I was one of 4 candidates that Stand for Children supported in that race, and all 4 of those candidates won. So I will tell you that since 2012, the IPS school board has been largely controlled by charter-friendly, non-for-profit organizations. Y'all see my air quote, right? Okay, all right. The other organization that was present in that campaign was Democrats for Education Reform. They went defunct shortly after. I've heard, whispers about them coming back here and there. I don't know that they're not back yet. If they're coming, knock on wood, because we hope that doesn't happen. All right. What is this? So this was a little bit about where I got my start, but let's zoom out a bit. And I'm going to put my professor hat on. We're going to talk about these big words and definitions for a minute. Neoliberalism. What is neoliberalism? It's an ideology saying that the market will fix it. It will make it better if we can just allow for competition and introduce a business model. The competition will somehow magically, in competing, the best organization or the best school will win. Okay? Privatization is what we are describing when we say, it's neoliberalism is kind of the theoretical framework for it, but as we see actual schools becoming profitable, we say, oh, they're privatizing that. Okay, that's what that word is used for typically. Or we see things being outsourced, right? Things that were once public, even thinking about the functions of a school. A small example would be, 50, 60 years ago, school employees cooked the meal at the school in the school kitchen, and then they packaged it up and then they served it to the students. That was a function of the school. Well, now that's contracted out. That part of school, that function has been privatized. Now schools pay for that. Similar to sometimes they contract out transportation or security, right? School security officers sometimes are hired through a different company. So those are all examples of how bits and pieces, sometimes it's not the whole shebang that's privatized, but little pieces of it have been privatized decade by decade, right? You can think about it in that way as well. But when we think about democracy and the retention of our voice as voters, that's a part of it as well. So we're thinking about shifting decision-making out of the public sphere in a way, because what we're doing is we're taking our voice out of it anytime there's a decision that's made that's not made by someone that you elected to represent you, okay? And so if you think about schools now having boards, whether they're for-profit or non-for-profit, it doesn't matter. They're appointed boards, right? You didn't vote that person onto that board, therefore they're not representing you, the taxpayer. So we have to think about that as well. All right, so, how do we know that this is still moving and shaking? It's in Project 2025. And if you want the slides, there's a link to it there. It's cumbersome, it's hard, it's hard to read and hard to digest, because there's a lot in it that's like, But, I would encourage you to at least give it a little skimming, okay? Because that's the playbook. So if you want to know even what's going on at the federal level, there it is. All right, so I like this book. I don't know if y'all, has anyone read this? It's a good read. Okay, The Privatization of Everything. There are other similar books. The Privatizers was mentioned earlier. So the author here is Donald Cohen. Easy to read. He gives examples from all over the country of privatization and what does it look like, and gives very concrete examples. And so one that you may have heard of because it went kind of viral. Chicago sold their parking meters. Did you all know that? They sold their parking meters. They signed a 75-year lease over to a private company for every parking meter in all of Chicago for $1.1 billion. I think this happened in 2008, 2009. So 15 years in, okay, so they signed the lease for 75 years. There's 60 years left on the lease. They've made their $1.1 billion back, plus profited $500 million on top of that. And they still have 60 years left to go. Plus, if those parking meters can't be eliminated. So guess what? The city wants to put in a bike lane. The city wants to change a road, repave, do something. No, if they eliminate a parking meter, they have to pay that company in order to do so. Okay, privatization. Another example in the book, privately owned prisons. Do you all know that there are privately owned prisons all over the country? All over the country. And what's problematic about that? Well, those private companies that own the prisons want to make sure that they are going to be profitable. Therefore, in the contract language, oftentimes there's a guaranteed occupancy rate. So then you have, law enforcement or government officials signing on and saying, we're going to make sure that you get that prison is full, at least 80% full in perpetuity. What happens if everybody is law abiding and no one? I mean, you understand my point, right? That's egregious. And then another subject in the book here is monopolies that we have on utility companies, on our water resources. Dare I say Flint, Michigan, right? We know how that went down. In Indianapolis right now, folks are going out and protesting because our light bill is sky high and they keep squeezing us more and more. And so our light bills have raised 35% in the past 10 years, all in the name of profit. No other reason. They cite reasons. They're oftentimes hard to believe. Like you read their reasoning, it's like, oh, well, we have to deal with vegetation. Oh, okay. The math doesn't math for me. That's not 34%. But currently, they want an additional $192 million a year. And that's how they come to the utility regulations company. They say, we need this much more money. It's 10% more money. And so, utilities regulations, city, county councilors, they're out in the community, doing listening sessions, and people are coming out and they're definitely speaking out against it. But another example of privatization, AES literally is the one electrical company in Indianapolis. And so if you don't have AES, I guess you don't have power, All right, so good book on Amazon. I recommend if you want a kind of a broad lens of what privatization is. What does this look like in regard to education? Education is, public education is a common good, right? Thinking back to the colonies, right? At first it was private, you had to pay. You had to pay to get your child educated. Well, then Horace Mann came along, right? And then we came into a space where we began collecting taxes, and that's what paid for the teacher. And we've kind of held on to that loosely, right? Our property taxes pay for our education, for our public education system. And so when you think about, well, how do we make that private? The vehicle to privatize public schools are charter schools. Notice I didn't say anything about charter schools other than they are for-profit or non-for-profit. Some of them are corporate, some of them are nationwide chains, some of them are homegrown. Okay, that's fine. They do all have a board for their company, whether that's for-profit or non-for-profit. They have a board. That board is not elected, but that board of that company operates using your tax money, okay? That's privatization. That's taking money that's intended for the public, for the common good, for everyone, right? And it's flowing into private hands. And why am I saying that? Because for-profit or non-for-profit doesn't matter. There's a CEO, okay, at the top. There's a structure. It's a business, right? Thinking back to how competition is the mode of operation here, okay? So, yeah, tax dollars is one asset that's being transferred. The other asset that's being transferred is the buildings, the real estate, the land that oftentimes public schools own. And I don't say they are the owner, actually, we are the owner, right, aren't we? Because it may have been our parents or our grandparents, but somebody, or maybe us, right now, somebody paid taxes that went to purchase that building, that went to purchase that asset. It's held in the common good until it's not, okay? We'll talk about that because we have to be cognizant of the fact that these buildings can be worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And then sometimes when that building gets transferred over, it might be full of good stuff. Maybe there's some antiques in there. There might be some artwork, some desks at least, right? All that stuff is worth some money too. All right, so I'm not going to focus on this, right? Because you already know where I'm coming from. But the other thing certainly is that vouchers are being used as well. So we think about charter schools as the vehicle that I'm most intimately familiar with in my struggle at IPS. However, vouchers are taking a really, really, really big chunk of tax money too. Okay, so I've included some figures here. In 22-23 school year, spending $311 million. This is in the state of Indiana. Next year it goes up to $439 million. The following year, then we're at almost $500 million. And I got some additional data. At that point, they were serving about 76,000 students statewide with that almost $500 million. And starting next year, there is no income cap, okay? We're going to look at a little bit of statistics about who are we serving with this money, but progressively lessened the restrictions around who could get this voucher money. So in the very beginning, like 22-23, we were talking about we're only going to serve kids that have tried public school and didn't want to be in public school anymore. Remember that rhetoric? Okay, that's gone out the window with that. So most students now who receive vouchers have never tried a public school setting. They just have been a private school student the whole time. And you see the growth here. And so we are inching upwards, still at $674 million that's been budgeted. And I think last year there was a $400,000 cap. There were some pretty wealthy families that could still qualify for vouchers, but now we're talking about, no, we don't need any income limits anymore. So even the $400,000 income limit is gone. All right. Okay, so we'll see here. Now this graphic I did not create. I wish I had this type of skill set, but this is from the Indiana Coalition for Public Education. I am a board member of that organization as of earlier this year. Super excited to join them. I love how this shows. This is called the leaky bucket, and it just kind of shows all of the places that education funding goes to. And so as we talk about the choice scholarships, the voucher program, charter schools, not only brick and mortar, but also over on the far corner there on the left, virtual charter schools. Just giving you an idea of all the places that taxpayer money goes. This is all taxpayer money, okay? And so, so take a look at that, let that sink in, and then I'll direct you to the statement at the bottom right. What's left after all of that is what goes to educate our traditional public school students in the state of Indiana. And I would add that, you know, given our volatile legislative session and given the state of where we are with things right now, I mean, there are some things that have even happened since this graphic was created. We've heard the Department of Education is going to be eliminated, right? I've heard Title I is going away. And I've heard special education services are in jeopardy, right? So that this need, just keep in mind there's some fluidity here, but this is a good representation of where we were not long ago, okay? All right, so let's talk about why is this happening? And Oletha is gonna help me with this again. We're gonna circle back to this. Now, y'all, I gotta tell you, I'll start here, I'm gonna go around this way, we're gonna talk about this, then we'll come back, I promise we'll come back. But that's kind of how I communicate. Thank you for following me. Thank you for putting up with that. But the why, to give some historical context, and I kicked myself because I didn't lean into this when I spoke to a reporter from South Bend, and he was very gracious to give me a call and ask me, what are you going to be talking about? And I just start talking, and I didn't get into this, and I regretted not leaning into this a little bit. The why is because privatization and the idea of school choice is a way to maintain segregation. Mm-hmm. Okay? So let's think about it. I'm gonna give you the Indianapolis story. I don't know the South Bend story, but hopefully it'll come out later when we talk a little bit. I understand bits and pieces of the South Bend story, but in Indianapolis, DSEG happened, right? But it didn't. And it continued to not happen until 1981. So in Indianapolis, they evaded, that court order for many years, over a decade, until finally a judge said, okay, y'all don't want to play around. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to have to bus. And so in 1981, Judge Hugh Dillon said, mandated busing, and it's one way. Black students will be bused out of IPS into the township. So white flight, as it was happening, created a donut of what we call township schools all around the IPS district. And so those townships were all predominantly white. Black students who lived in certain neighborhoods in Indianapolis had to attend federal, this was a federal court order, had to be bused out to a certain township. This began in 1981, it ended in 2015, okay? That's how long it continued. But when we talk about school choice and you hear the rhetoric is so slick, I'm lifting this up to you because I want you to bring your best discernment. Whenever you hear somebody talking about equity, listen carefully. Listen carefully, because is there equity for real? Let's lean into that. So, vouchers. Who gets vouchers? 64% of the students getting vouchers are white, 17% Hispanic, 9% Black, 5% multiracial, 4% Asian. Average income over $100,000. Special education students, about 9% are getting a voucher. That's less than the state average. Okay, we'll say that. It's less than the state average. These are the students who, let's contextualize this. We're going to talk about it in plain terms. These are the students who are using your tax dollars to attend a private school, okay? You're paying for that. It's a vehicle for privatization. The other vehicle for privatization is students who go to a charter school. And this is Indianapolis specific, all right? And these are rough. These are rough numbers, but they're accurate. About 10% of the students who attend a charter school in Indianapolis are white. 31% Hispanic, 50% Black, 5% multiracial, 4% Asian. 72% of those students qualify for free and reduced lunch. Most of our schools can just blanket give free and reduced lunch to everyone because of the Title I numbers, which may be going away. But special education, about 11 to 12% of those students qualify for special education services. Does this look desegregated to you? Because I have some concerns. I do, I have concerns. School choice began to be talked about around the same time that desegregation began to be talked about. Understand, 1950s, Milton Friedman, neoliberalism as the construct we're talking about, privatization. It was tried first in North Carolina, I believe. But when we think about that, then we think about, okay, well, we did deseg and busing and stuff. What came next? Magnet schools. Y'all remember magnet schools? I went to a magnet school. I'm gonna sit here and tell you, I'm centering and acknowledging my privilege. I went to a magnet school, as did a lot of people in Indianapolis. Did y'all have magnet schools?
Yeah, I
here
taught
too?
that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I taught that one.
Yeah.
I taught that one.
Yeah. Segregation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then in Indy, we had select schools. We tried everything, y'all. We threw all the spaghetti at the wall, like, to try to figure it out, right? And I don't say that it's all malicious. I think it was a challenge to our public school systems to desegregate, to follow this mandate, right? It was a challenge. We had to we tried to be creative, I think, and I'm not suggesting it was all malintent. However, at the end of the day, it was still segregated. Okay? All right, so, okay, you're with me though, right? Okay, here we go. Looping back to Indy, 'cause I want you to be on the lookout for some of these names, okay? There's organizations, and I'm gonna tell you what, there's some of these organizations that have begun or started an LLC to do certain things so that you don't know that it's this organization doing it. So it is I couldn't even make it a map. I would have loved to draw some lines of connection for you on this, but it would have been so convoluted. It would have been very confusing for me to do so. But I mentioned to you at the inception of this thing is the Mind Trust. The Mind Trust was born out of Bart Peterson's tenure as mayor, and his education person was David Harris. So they put their minds together and started the Mind Trust. David Harris was the first executive director of that. They brought down millions. So this is kind of the money machine for the privatization of our public schools. Now the person is Brandon Brown. David Harris left. They tried to start one up in Cincinnati called the City Fund or something like that. So they're looking, or at least have contemplated expanding, but it is an Indianapolis organization. As I mentioned, some of the first recruits were Stand for Children. Also, the alternative teacher certification programs were some of the first. So TFA and TNTP, the new teacher project, those have been around just about as long as Stand for Children and the Mind Trust. Democrats for Ed Reform. Who funds the Mind Trust? The Gates Foundation, the Walton family members foundations, Alice Walton, some of them people. Not only do they fund the Mind Trust and Stand for Children, I had some Walton people on my campaign finance report, y'all. Like, yes, I'm not playing. Read ratings too, directly to me. It's like, ooh, this feels real gross. And that's when I started to peel back the layers of all of this stuff. Bloomberg gave me $5,000. The former mayor of New York City. So what Stand for Children? Now, Stand for Children still is involved in campaign finance, vetting, and things of that nature, but they have created a new nonprofit organization called Rise Indy, and now Rise Indy does a lot of that work. So they weren't on my first, but they're around. They weren't around on my first term, but they are around now, and they interestingly not only give money, they have a boot camp. So if they consider you as a potential candidate, you can go to the boot camp. Some of the city county councilors come to the boot camp, and they get paid nicely to be facilitators for the boot camp. So you see how people are getting bought and paid for. So it's not just the school board that is full of charter-friendly people. Now you've got city county councilors and legislators and others because they're training and they're getting money in their pocket, right? So, yeah. Anything else I need to say here? Empower Ed Families, does a lot of the same work as Stand for Children does. I'm sure y'all will have questions. So, as you saw, I took in $78,000. I mentioned that we're sending out mailers. Here's a rundown of what Stand for Children has reported. And when I say that, I mean after intense pressure. Do y'all, anyone remember Amos Brown? Did anyone listen to him? Okay. It took a lot of pressure to get Stand for Children to be forthcoming with any data about how much they were spending throughout the years. Finally, we got a peek at it. Understand there's an Indiana office, there's a Portland, they're all over. So, it's hard to pin down, but this is the best that we have, thanks to WFYI. So since 2012, I served that one term, 2012 to 2016, then I stepped away. I was in my doc program, I wanted to focus on that. But I stayed really involved in the election cycles, and so I wanted to see grassroots people get elected. I was, so we got a couple throughout the years. We got a few, but when I tell you that it's been largely it's been bought and paid for, and it's been consistent, you will find it very hard as a candidate to combat this level of spending, right? When I ran this past time, this is my final vote here from my last time. I got a story I'm gonna tell my story now. This is a bit of a funny one, and I'm glad I can tell it in this context. When I went to file to run this time, it was last June. First of all, they moved the deadline up. They're always doing stuff like that. So I thought it was August. Well, it turns out it's June. You have to have at least 10 registered voters to sign a petition to be able to get on the ballot. So I scrambled. I was like, well, get out there and get these signatures. I took my paper down there, and you always try to, if you are supposed to get 10 and you want to run for something, get 25. Because that's how I think anyway, and I think that's best practice. So I go down there with my signatures. They have to verify that everyone on your list is registered to vote, and so I'm sitting there waiting patiently, for my 25 or so people to be verified, and in walks this gentleman. And you know how you know, and you just know, and right? You know what I'm talking about. So I'm sitting there, and here comes this gentleman, and I just knew, and I was like, oh, there's my opponent, okay. And the butterflies were there, and just all the feels, I'm like, okay. The tingly, I'm like, okay. And so he brings his paper in, and he proceeds to do the same thing I'm doing, just sit there and wait, And so the lady comes out to talk to him, and she's, I got 25 signatures, so mine are taking longer than his. So she comes out and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. There's one signature that, is not valid. This person isn't actually a registered voter, And so he had like 9. You have to have 10. He had 9. And he had already signed his own. And so he was in a little bit of a dilemma. And so he turns to me, and he's like, frantic a little bit. He's like, oh, excuse me, hi, where do you live, and this and that. And I mean, I already knew that he was my opponent, but how do you say that to someone? Well, but I let it organically develop that he was running against me. And at first I was, talk about like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, right? And you're like, oh, should I help him out, right? Because I am a nice person, and my first instinct is to be helpful, and I believe in democracy. Let the best person win. So what do y'all think I did? I signed it. I signed it, and I'm so glad that I can tell y'all the story in this context. I was like, this is either like the best thing, like if I get to the gates, it's gonna be like a pat on the back, right? Or it's gonna be the worst thing ever, right? And I'm gonna really live to regret it. And some of my friends were like, I can't believe you did that. I was like, I know I can't either, but it ended all right. So I got 54% of the vote, and he got 45% of the vote. It was harder, obviously. My 2012 campaign, with all that money flowing through and stuff, I was like a candidate princess. It was like I was pampered in that experience. This was not that. It was totally like grassroots. Princesses don't do grassroots like the two, but it was awesome. I did get some support from the teachers union. That's the one organization that really gave me some money. It was not the $78,000 campaign, though. It was about half of that, but it ended well, obviously, and I can tell you my secret story. I was like, I don't know, I might have to take that one to the grave. Okay. Where are we at on time?
11:55.
Oh my gosh.
So
Okay.
what, I don't know anymore. If you want me to time you, I can.
I don't know, how late are we here? 12:30?
12:30.
Okay, let me hurry up and stop telling these stories.
We like that story. And
Yeah, thank
you.
So, Senate Bill 1, this was the big one that's going to be phased in. It's the one that mandates that we share property taxes with charters moving forward. And so this is going to be phased in over 4 years. So at 25%, 2028, 29, 30, and then fully sharing in 31. From the IPS vantage point, we are trying to get in front of this, and we have to plan this out. This is huge. I imagine, I know there's one charter school here. I imagine anywhere there's a charter school, there's a similar conversation happening, right? And so this is why, this timing is so important that we're having this conversation right now. We in IPS are projecting a loss of around $96 million as a result of this, and so there's no way to trim around the edges when you're talking about a number like that. It's just not. It's not possible to. It's not possible for a community to not feel the impact of a $96 million loss. It's just not possible. So there's really nothing that's off the table at this point, and there's no good way to slice it. You understand? Some people are going to be affected, whether that's a school closure or a total restructuring is probably what will happen. And so there's our superintendent, Dr. Johnson. What's happening right now is a part of what is going to shape a future restructuring. Another piece of legislation, HEA 1515, had language that created the Indianapolis Local Education Alliance, or ILEA. They've already had 2 meetings. They're going into their 3rd meeting. This is a body of people that are charged with what you'll read there, but basically figuring out how to share facilities and transportation. Okay, so this is in addition to the property tax share. It is a 9-member body. IPS got to bring 3 or 4, I think 4, and the mayor got to appoint the other 5. The mayor runs these meetings, okay? And just so you know, the mayor of Indianapolis is the only mayor in the entire country that has the authority to, it's an authorizer of charter schools. It's called the Office of Educational Innovation in Indianapolis. It's the only one like it in the entire country. And so when I say the mayor is leading this, I want you to understand the politics of that, okay? The mayor's office is deeply engaged in the charter school world in our city, okay? So we are in a kind of a state of flux, and we don't know what to predict at this point. The ILEA is meeting. They're looking over our buildings, our utilization rates, how many students are in each building. Not only ours, but charter schools too, thankfully. Try to right-size that. But they don't make a recommendation until December. So this 9-member body, 5 appointed from the mayor, 4 from IPS, gets lots and lots of data, and then by December will tell us, the IPS school board, as well as the legislature, what they recommend. So fun times we're in here. And then SB 1001, the inequitable part of what's happening is that this bill maintained the charter school grant. So as charters start to receive their cut of the property tax dollars, guess what? They still get this $1,400 per pupil. So remember the leaky bucket graphic and how much money is going all over the place, and then we get the drops that come out at the end, right, for public schooling. We have to property tax share, and they get this additional money. So don't you let them talk to you about equity. If you hear that word, please let your spidey senses be activated, and you really interrogate that word and ask hard questions. Okay, so in Indy, here are some people that really showed up and showed out this legislative session and beyond. We have lots of grassroots organizations that are leaning in, that are talking about things, that are doing the work. But here's the thing. This is why I'm here, and this is the work that I'm trying in my limited spare time to engage in Indianapolis, is to build connection. And so that's why I'm going to talk fast now, because I want to make sure we have time for connections to be made here today, because I think it's integral to the work. What I saw was all of these organizations doing amazing things. I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute. But they were still kind of doing them in their own lane, you know what I mean? And I just feel like at this moment, if we could collectivize this movement a bit, we'd be more powerful. And so that's what I hope to inspire in you all today, okay? The IPS Parent Council was begun just in like January of this year. This is a baby thing, which is awesome. I'm thinking too about the need for a student council. So we have the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA. There's one little young YDSA chapter in one of our high schools, and I'm thinking that might be a good place to start. But I'm thinking about, student government. How do we get representatives from our student body to come to the board, talk to us at the board meetings, just become advocates, right? So I'm hoping we see that develop as well. I'm trying to plant those seeds. So a lot has happened since January. All of this stuff is from the legislative session primarily. It's from January until now. The Indiana Coalition for Public Ed had a State House Day of Action. Really good speakers. That bigger photo is the crowd, like huge crowd. Lots of teachers turned up. One school district canceled school for the day for their teachers to be there, which was incredible and unexpected. SB 518, that's Jack. Jack's shirt says no SB 518, less pie means fewer slices. So Democratic Socialists of America came up with this pie. The idea of this pie, when you think about property tax money, it's only so much of it, right? So if you take a pie and then you cut it into smaller and smaller slices. So that was a good way to frame the conversation so that folks could understand, what's happening. And I'm giving him his props, because when I tell you he sat in that seat for about 11 hours. There was testimony all day on that bill. It was actually limited, it got so many people signed up, it was limited to like 30 seconds or 60 seconds you could speak. But he sat, and he chose that seat because it was on the camera, and he stayed there for like 11 hours, 12 hours. The kids did come out. I saw all kinds of awesome signs. There's just a snippet of some of the bills. I can't even begin to tell you. There were dozens and dozens of bills. 289, 287, 10002, 1515, organizations online, Mad Voters, a good one to follow to keep, in the legislative session if you want to follow bills and get updates. ICPE as well, I think that's ICPE's, yes, that's their site. So you can, if you need the synopsis like me, because yes, you can go to the IGA website and look them up if you're so inclined and lean into each particular bill, but there's a lot of great organizations that'll give you the summary, right? And then, listen, let's be real, for all of the pro-public fight that's been great and all this advocacy that's happened, our opposition also shows up. So this is Brandon Brown, the current executive director of the Mine Trust. He's out there too. Not only is he out there advocating in favor, but they've got people at the State House, right? I told you, Rise Indy has that boot camp. They pay people to come teach at. The Mine Trust has friends at the State House. But this is for show. I'm gonna go just like a regular person. Okay, we see you, but there's a lot behind the scenes is what I'm saying, okay? But just know that your voice is important because they're out there with their voices too. So we must show up. Okay, this is my friend Christina Smith. Now, she's been in the fight with me since 2011, 2012, okay? She's been the leader of the Indy Ed Justice Coalition. And there was we were at the State House so much, right? But so were other groups. So there was a rally, Beckwith. It was the same day that Micah Beckwith had some kind of a rally in the State House at the same time as a public education rally. And so they were there, Beckwith's people were there, and it was obviously pretty tense, right? So Chrissy got told, the public ed group got told to relocate, and she was trying, but there were like Beckwith people coming from every direction. Anyway, my friend got arrested. And she is a outspoken, vocal, she's been in the game for a long time. But this is what I want to illuminate, what happened and how real it can get. So, show up and show out, but be prepared. Call your person next to you, be like, hey, you got my bail? You got my bail? Are they even doing it? I heard they took away, yes, they took away cash bail. Anyway, so I want to talk about South Bend. I want to hear from Oletha. I want to understand some of the nuances of the community, but from what I understand, this is what we're looking at in the near future. If I'm not correct, please correct me, but this is what I gathered. Okay? And we'll lean into the One Innovation Network agreement that you do have. Again, this is what I've gathered. The thing I wanted to lift up here is that we have Purdue Polytechnics in Indy as well. We have two and a half, 3, okay? And I wanted to lift up that, part of their selling point is this guaranteed admission idea, that they have this awesome relationship with Purdue University and blah, 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 blah. So from what I researched, 34 of the graduates from Purdue Polytechnic were admitted and then subsequently enrolled at Purdue University. And I was like, how many students does Purdue have? Because that 34 doesn't seem like a very big number. Purdue has about 44,000 undergrads. That's what Google tells me, okay? if I'm wrong, again, if I'm wrong, please help me. But that, so that, again, be discerning, okay? This is, we're talking about privatization, we're talking about market-based schooling, we're talking about for-profit, right? So we're also talking about advertising. This advertising, okay? So when I ask you to be discerning, understand, this is rhetoric designed to entice people to enroll. It's shiny, it's new, it's awesome, it's brilliant, it's innovative, right? Okay, so that's where I'm gonna stop. Privatization has been in Indy for 10, 15 years. We're just now at a point where we have instituted property tax sharing. In my mind, what does that do? That solidifies their position. They now have their sights on other markets. So now, anywhere there's an opportunity, okay, opportunity meaning students and property taxes, then they might relocate or plan a new location, not a relocation, but an expansion, right? One charter school in Indianapolis at a recent finance committee meeting discussed their plans to use their newfound property tax money to expand into markets outside of IPS, some of the townships. So we are aware in Indy that this is the next move, and I would say South Bend, it's time to prepare yourselves, okay? So that's all I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah, we're ready. We wanna get beyond any silos that are here. So whatever organization you're representing, awesome. Bring it, but be ready to work with the next person. That's what I want to see happen in Indianapolis, and that's what I wish for you all as well. Okay? All right. And that's you so much. It's me.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin first, if you don't mind, to say thank you again to Dr. Cosby. Really appreciate it. And I especially appreciate her sharing her life story. That was very inspirational. And it can be inspirational for our students to understand there's no limits to what you can do regardless of what you might be told. This afternoon, we are continuing a discussion that we actually started in 2017. This discussion about privatization and charter schools. This forum this afternoon, that discussion actually, the first discussion took place January 18th, 2017. And the heading for that forum was, what will we lose if we lose public education? And the conclusion that we came to was, we lose our democracy. Now, when you consider that was 8 years ago, and look what we are going through right now, that forum actually stood as an alarm, such as what we're doing today. We're giving an alarm to let people know, to be aware so that we won't be caught off guard. The NAACP in 2016 Board of Directors, chaired by Rosalind M. Brock, ratified a resolution adopted by the full body of delegates at the 2016 National Convention, calling for a national moratorium on charter/private charter school expansion. Their policy on charter schools furthers the association's long-standing commitment to educational equity. It also reaffirms past resolutions regarding the consequences of privatizing education. These resolutions that the NAACP have established dates back as far as 2009, and we have roughly a total of 47 resolutions on the book regarding school privatization and charter schools. The ratification of this resolution supports the 2014 resolution, School Privatization, Threat to Public Education, in which the organization, of course, opposes privatization of public schools. And all of our positions are data-driven, of course. There were 4 areas of concern that were stipulated, and there's so much I could say about each one of these, but you can Google NAACP moratorium on charter schools, and you can also go to our website to get further information on our positions. But the number one concern that was stipulated in the resolution of 2016 were that charter schools have been known to cherry pick their students, giving the false impression of educational excellence. And these you are probably familiar with, but these were the more concerning parts of charter schools that we listed in the resolution. Not only do they cherry pick, they are known to target cities whose public school systems are primarily African American and Hispanic. These actions do not result in academic outcomes. Rather, they cause academic chaos. They also pave the way for a potential increase in segregation and inequalities, as Dr. Cosby has stipulated. But we'd also like to bring this locally. Let's take this personally. What we have observed locally for years is that the concept and the results of school choice, and let's remember, charters are a product of school choice, and school choice is school choice. But we want to collaborate this with a 1998 memo from the desk of Dr. Virginia Calvin on a study that she conducted to examine the impact of district-wide school choice would have on the corporation, and one of its conclusions in regards to integration was that instead of relieving segregation, it would actually exacerbate it with multi-year upheavals. We have had multi-year upheavals. The second concerning stipulation in the resolution is that the NAACP works with a lot of organizations, and they had a lot of reputable studies, and these were conducted in 2016, but will still bear witness to today. The studies concluded that charter schools expel students of color at higher rates with less or no transparency, especially black children. Now you can apply that to any form of punishment. Charters have been known to actually commit that at higher rates. A third stipulation in the resolution was that charter schools educate 5% of the nation's 50 million school children, yet receive a disproportionate share of public funding. We all know that. These are from 2016 rates, and I understand that the latest one now is they probably educate between 4 to 7% of the country's school children. The fourth concerning factor is that too many charter schools are exempt from the same level of transparency and accountability regulations to which other publicly funded schools must adhere to. We know this. We also know that this breeds inequity and often opens the door to malfeasance and mismanagement of public funds. And of course, also violations of students' basic civil rights. Now, in light of such a pattern of inequity and inconsistencies, the charter school system, this is why the NAACP called for a moratorium on the expansion of charters, and we called for a moratorium until such time that number one, charter schools are subject to the same transparency and accountability standards to parents and the community at large as the traditional schools. 2, that public funds are not diverted to charter schools at the expense of public school systems. 3, charter schools cease from expelling students or suspending students that public schools have a legal obligation and a legal duty to educate. And 4th, charter schools cease to perpetuate racial, ethnic, gender segregation, as well as de facto segregation of the highest performing children from whose aspirations may be high, but whose talents are not yet obvious. The NAACP, of course, has reservations for charter schools, but as you know, we also recognize that many children who attend traditionally public schools are inadequately and inequitably equipped to prepare them for the new and advanced methods and competitive environment that they will face as adults. And my last point is that the NAACP's moratorium on the proliferation of the privately managed charter schools recognizes and strives to alleviate the challenges facing the entire public school system, while at the same time ensuring transparency and accountability. And similar to its call for a national moratorium on the use of high-stakes exit exams, the NAACP's call for a nationwide moratorium on charter schools expansion is very much needed, so we can examine the past and present harmful effects that it has had and continues on the corporation's most vulnerable students that has been historically left behind, and we want to put an end to the educational chaos. Thank you very much.
So it's open for questions.
The money, if South Bend, St. Joe County, if they have 30 private schools, the state of Indiana gives those private schools money. Does that money come from the state, or does it come from the public schools in the county?
It follows the student. So if students want to attend one of the 30 private schools here, and the parents apply for the choice scholarship, the voucher, and they're granted that voucher, that money comes out of the pot that would fund public schools. So going back to that leaky bucket
So
image.
a county, Bible County, that does not have charter schools, that county does not lose any money. The only counties that lose money are the ones that have the charter schools. Is that?
They would be impacted by the presence of, I think we're all impacted by the voucher system at a state level. If there are no nearby charter schools, that means that that school corporation is not yet sharing property tax dollars. But what I'm suggesting is that it may not be long before they may be faced with competition. That's why I want to get that awareness out, because now that this law is enacted, this legislation makes every public school corporation in the state of Indiana liable, legally responsible to share property taxes if a charter school decides to locate in their enrollment area.
Can you clarify something for me? And I saw it was part of the receptacles from the leaky bucket.
Okay.
And that's your, they're called virtual learning schools. Are those listed under charter schools?
They are charter schools that are not brick and mortar, so they teach their students virtually. However, they get a lot of money anyway. So there's, okay, so y'all, did y'all hear about Union School Corporation? Yes, okay.
I'm sorry, tell us, please.
Okay, so Union School Corporation, small, rural district. Its major competitor was a virtual, online
Right.
charter school. They got closed down. And this kids basically got transferred over into that virtual school, is how I understand it. So it's a thread that we need to be aware of. They get money, they get per pupil. What they don't get, I believe, they don't get the pot of money that deals with like renovating and the real estate stuff, right? Because they're brick and mortar, but they still get per pupil dollars. So wherever, if a child enrolls into that virtual charter school, their per pupil money follows them, and that's how they're getting wealthy also.
They get 85% off the.
Thank you. Thank you. Listen, y'all, I do my best, but school finance is not for the weak. So this is about as good as I can give you in a lot of instances, but yes, thank you for that.
Question.
Dan, and you had mentioned earlier you didn't think that it was malicious. But I would beg to disagree with that. I think it is diabolical, and I think it is malicious. Jason Stanley, professor at Yale, who's now left the country, gone to Ontario, Canada, wrote a couple of great books, one on erasing history, and then fascism. And talks about, places like Hungary, Turkey, and other countries that have gone more totalitarian, that their first line of attack is always the schools. Always education. Always education. And we can go back to the 1970s with the inception of the Heritage Foundation, and we can see that even back then, they were staunch advocates of the privatization of education. That, Edward Meese and others wanted to dismantle them immediately. That was one of their big things, get rid of the Department of Education. Why? For a variety of reasons, but one is to undercut, of course, the power of what you said, of public education and democracy. And so I do think it's insidious. And I do think that, that what we're seeing in this country is a more, they don't like being called fascists, but they are. And I see that movement, even though people are not conscious about it or aware of it, more people are. But I think we start calling them what they are. And to me, I can't say that the opposition anymore is a, Republican Party. I think of it as a fascist party from the top to the bottom. That's not to say that there are conservatives out there, but the organization as such, and I think it is insidious. And the reason, and going back to Jason Stanley's work, is that those who control education, what do? They whitewash history, literally. And we already see that happening. We see organizations like Dennis Prager University getting curriculum contracts with states and talking about, minimizing the effects of slavery in our country and minimizing the history of that in our country. And so I think it is, and making a lot of money on top of it. So I think it is insidious. I really do.
I thank you for that. What I would say and add, if I could add anything, because that was a great comment, would be that we know the Heritage Foundation, and we know that. I see that it's not a partisan issue, right? And so it's so insidious that it's no longer easily identifiable, right? And so in Indianapolis, there's just as many centrist Democrats that are implicit than there are Republican. And so it's not like you can point fingers at a particular party and lay blame. I think it's tricky for me because I see a lot of folks that are doing the work, like the teachers in the charter schools, that their understanding is shrouded. And so I don't gut punch everybody. I gut punch you guys because I think you can handle it, you get it, right? But there's a lot of people out here that are just folks in classrooms that are not thinking about it in a political sense or at that 30,000 foot view. And so being an educator, I find myself being a little bit sensitive to those folks. And so I appreciate your voice and calling it what it is, and we can be real about that. But we do need that level of brevity in order to wake people up, right? But we certainly in Indy, and I think that we also need to see this as a facet of a shifting political party system, right? And the involvement of the socialists were pretty instrumental this year in terms of advancing our agenda. And so what I see, this is my opinion, I see kind of the Democratic folks, the Democrats in Marion County and Indianapolis as being centrist in a lot of ways. And part of it is this. It is. Anyway, I digress. Good point.
Thank you.
Another question?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, and
Yeah, my question is, because I hear so many different voices in the community, how many of students actually have choice? What percentage would you say actually have a choice to go to a school, like a charter school, for instance, or a private school? What choice is there when we talk about school choice?
In Indianapolis, I would say it's pretty prevalent because the Mind Trust built the entire construct to enable it to happen. So one of the first organizations that was created was called Enroll Indy. And so basically it outsourced our enrollment from in-house IPS to a nonprofit organization created by the privatization movement to ensure that students, as they were considering enrollment in the public school system, right? Public school system, because charters are public schools, right? So now we have one system that enrolls students for both charter schools and traditional Indianapolis public school buildings. So in Indianapolis, it's baked in to how students approach enrollment. In other cities, it's different, right? But it's complicit. It's a part of the fabric of Indianapolis now.
We have a real strong diocese here, and a very big amount of, a lot of our students from the LEA go to the parochial school system, the private school system. So that becomes even more of a challenge than saying about the charter schools, because we're getting even more money second off into the private second here than we are the charter schools.
Marty and Laura.
I think one of your slides said that by 2030, the public schools were going to lose all the property tax that went to the operations budget. So I have a question. What percentage of the total school revenue is expenditures are represented by the operations budget. And what the school is supposed to do if there's no property tax going toward the operations budget?
It's a great question that I may not be able to accurately answer right now, Margie, but I'm happy to circle back, probably with some help from my CFO guy. But if it's not on this slide, it's not this slide, was it a different slide, Marty? Because I'm not sure. I think, in IPS, the concern is that we have a lot of buildings that are aged, and so you have a really valid point.
Yeah.
On the one hand, school buildings need to be repaired and upkeep and all the things, but then we have now an organization that's gonna decide how we share those facilities with charter
Yeah.
schools. We've had a couple of instances already where, because I don't know if you've heard about the $1 law, where we had to sell vacant buildings to charter schools
Yeah.
for $1. So that happened a couple of times. The organizations that paid $1 and got the building, then discovered, oh, well, I need $1.3 million to fix this stuff. And tried to raise the money, maybe put in some money to it, maybe not. I haven't seen any receipts, but what's happened is, at least twice now, a charter school organization has bought a building for $1, claimed they tried to fix it up, claimed they didn't have the money to fix it completely, and then sold it. Well, guess what? Do you think they sold it for $1? No. Do you think IPS recouped anything? No, they didn't. So there aren't receipts out there, but they'll say, oh, we bought it for $1, we put $400,000 into it, wasn't enough, gotta sell it. Darn, there's no money left to get, because the other part of the law was the public school district is supposed to recoup some of that if it's then sold, but that hasn't happened. So Marty, I didn't answer your question,
Right.
but I wanted to share that.
Maybe our superintendent can give us some insight on that.
It's by 2030, what's going to happen is 100% of the local taxes must be shared. Right now, we chose to share with one charter, which is Purdue by tax, because it's the smallest and therefore they get the smallest percentage. But by 2030, we have to share all of the local taxes with them. Everything.
Yeah.
This young lady here, you had your hand.
Yeah, I had a question. So I use online high school, would that be considered a charter school, or is that something entirely different, since that's a public university?
I would lean toward yes, but I haven't researched it. If it's public, if it is charged with admitting all students who want to enroll, and it's online, and it's a high school, you say, then chances are it's a charter.
We do have a virtual public in South Bend.
Okay. Is that the IU one that she's referring to? Okay. No, please help me. I need local expertise too.
Yes, sir, and then we'll go back to Laura.
Just a comment, this has been very helpful for me as far as the information you provided, okay? I don't know whether I'd label it insidious, okay, but when you listed all the different companies, universities and all, Ball State, originally a teacher's college, and stuff was flying below the radar as to, okay, these groups, individuals or colleges are providing to the cause of charter schools in one way or the other, okay? And I was not aware of that. Some of the other stuff I was, as far as the stand up and mind truth. The other thing, and this is a very big comment, several years ago, PBS had a special, a four-part special on a brief history of the future. And they interviewed a lot of younger people on that. And the younger people almost just about everybody's in. We need something that we can look to the future as to how education will roll out for our future, okay? And so my comment to the South Bend School Board or yourself is, what are we doing as far as public education, not to just combat this onslaught of charter schools, but what are we doing to be able to solve the contingency how public education come about? What type of marketing is occurring statewide in regard to selling public education?
Thank you for that. I want to say this. Audre Lorde said you can't disassemble the master's house with the master's tools, right? I mean, something like that. I'm not saying it as eloquently, but the idea there is that there's a response to what's happening, which is to work within the construct and the confines of the system to fight back. And that's, I think, where we've been. But if I take your comment and kind of extrapolate a bit, what we really also need to be doing is creating an alternative, right? And to imagine the future like those students did and say, okay, well, we know that this is not what we want. This could be insidious or maybe not, whatever. Everyone has their opinion, but it's certainly not in the best interest of democracy. As taxpayers, we got to draw the line somewhere. We got to protect common good. How can we envision a system that does those things? And that, when we get to that space, then we're no longer reactionary. We're being visionaries in that space. And so as we congregate here and bring thought partnership to each other, I'd love it if it was a both and, you know. Not only how do we fight, but how do we vision a different way forward.
Yeah. Lauren, last question, then I'm going to turn it back over to Oletha and Trina.
I just wondered, Gayle, if you could talk a little bit about the oversaturation of schools in Indianapolis, kind of like Family Dollar stores, and the problems that it makes for the community.
Yeah, so there is, in my estimation, an oversaturation of school choice in Indianapolis, but it's also not something that any entity or group has willingly been able to put numbers to, though we've asked for data around how many students do we need to educate exactly, and what buildings can we use properly so that we're doing that. Instead, we see a lot of underutilized building spaces. This is part of the destruction of the public school system, right? So if we have to operate 55 buildings, you know, and keep the lights on and the grass mowed and all the things that go with overhead of such a large building, but we could actually reconstruct ourselves and do it in 32 buildings, that makes us stronger. But if we are forced to spread ourselves thin, as you know, that's resources. Again, part of the leaky bucket stuff. And going back to questions about operations, right? So that is a problem, but I think it's also been a strategy and that we've had to navigate, to be quite honest, which is part, and I try to remain hopeful as I can, but I was not super excited about the ILEA, but I am hopeful that at least that data will actually surface now, because they have to make a decision, or they're not the decision maker, but they're going to put forth some recommendations. You can't put forth recommendations if you don't have solid data to base it on. So I'm hoping one positive outcome of that whole process will be we'll finally get at that oversaturation issue, if nothing else.
Thank you.
Oletha.
Yeah, I just wanted to put something on the table. This conversation has been so great, but I want to bring it back to the schools. And when you had mentioned the privatization of prisons, I don't know if you're aware that currently there's $1 billion prison being built in Westfield, Indiana. And I remember reporting years ago when Tim Romer visited the Michigan City prison when he was congressman. And he asked the warden, how do you determine how many beds that you'll need? And he said, we will look at the second grade at-risk students to determine how many prison beds that we need. So I just want to put that on the table as something to be aware of as we're contemplating all these other things that's going on, that there's a strategy here and it's all connected. You know, whether we're talking about charters, private-owned charters, vouchers, but there is a dynamic that is happening, and actually it's all a part of 2025, although we're not hearing about a lot of it till now. But just wanted to put that in your ear, be thinking about as we are going forth this year, and we need to be mindful of, it starts at the second grade when they're determining their beds. And they were going to shut down Michigan City Prison and combine it with Westville, but I saw in a reporting that they decided they're going to keep Michigan City open because they are anticipating more lockups. So just wanted to put that on the table with all this other that we are learning today.
And Trina didn't close this out.
Let's give everybody a great big hand. I'd like to thank Daryl and the Civil Rights Heritage Center for opening up. I would like to acknowledge the Community Forum for Economic Justice, which I am the president of, for collaborating with us for 20 years. Audience, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Stuart Green, one of our school board members, and Mr. Reed, our superintendent. You know, I'm so excited about this opportunity. I hope that this is just an open door for us to collaborate together to preserve our public school system, because it's bigger than one person. It's a collaboration. We can all agree to disagree, but we need to preserve our public education because that is what keeps us going. One thing they did mention about the charter schools is that they don't provide the transportation for the students. And so the public school does provide the transportation. And what we don't hear about is when they kick those students out, that money still stays with that education at the charter schools. And so then the public schools have to take those children minus the dollars. And so they're working at a deficit. And so when we begin to talk about people thinking, okay, charter schools thinking this is a bright idea, but your children don't have a board that they can reach out to their representative and say, hey, I got a problem, I need this solved. You can't get in touch with anybody. And I know this personally because we had a situation, and I won't name the school, there was a charter school, and trying to get in touch with somebody on that board was crazy. And so we had to go to the principal didn't want to talk. And so those are some of the woes that people don't know about that exist when you talk about the charter schools and they sell you all these great things. And so what we have to do is work together to enhance our public school system and make sure that what we're doing, we can make sure all of the children are receiving the same level of education and they all have the opportunity to thrive. And so again, I want to thank Daryl, the Civil Rights Heritage Center, the Community Forum for Economic Justice, and each of you so that we can start this conversation to make sure that we don't have people coming in trying to take over our public school system. Thank you.